I've been having these weird dreams lately. Recurring dreams. Nightmares. But the children have been as well. They're all drawing the same man, same thing. There's a name all the children know and none of the adults speak. Here in Highseat. You know the name. You think you don't, but you do. Even as I'm sitting here, before I even tell you what happened, you already know the name. You've heard it. You know it. Your father knew it. Your grandfather knew it. Your ancestors knew it. It's all the same thing. The best I can do is watch for it. We all know the name.
Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened. So gosh, here I am, back from my hiatus. It's been a while, hasn't it? A whole season. I've got new bookshelves. I lost a ton of weight. I've got tummy definition now. Ooh, I lost 27 pounds. Adjusting my diet and exercising and, being a good boy when it comes to my health, etc., etc. And I'm back, I'm rested, let's get right back into it. So, welcome to Highseat, the white city of stone upon the mountain. A place that is storied but perfectly positioned in the center of a small nation. It's a few days' ride from the ocean, where they get all their fish, and trade. And it's a few days' ride from the mountains, where they get all their minerals and stone. And it's a few days' ride from the desert, where they get all their sand for glass. And they're a few days' ride from their northern neighbors. So it's more of a city-state, really. There's not a whole lot of, international politics going on, but there are enough mountains and enough ocean and enough, other things that kind of square it off into a box, because that is my habit. So, forgive me for being a little rusty in the storytelling department. It's been a while. So, Highseat is storied in such a way that, of course, when a city-state becomes rich and powerful and so perfectly positioned, an army comes along and tries to take it over, to take their stuff. Why build what you can take? So says the barbarian hordes from the endless shifting dunes to the south. And Highseat repelled them rather handily, but unfortunately the city itself was crumbling. It was old. The stone had turned from white to gray, whether from nature or from, catapults and their flying, firing their flaming balls of fire and wizards going back and forth on the battlefield. So Highseat was badly damaged, and rather than, tear it all down and take 5 generations to reset every stone atop the other when there might be another attack any time now to their city-state, Highseat decided that what they were going to do was go further up the mountain. So they left the ruined city at the bottom, a rather complex and very defensible location, and they moved up the mountain a couple of thousand paces and built a new city there. So it's Mount Highseat with the city of Highseat, And then around it, in a great halo, is the ruins of old Highseat, sometimes called Undertown, or even Undercity, if you're into World of Warcraft. So there is, of course, a main road that goes through the whole thing, well guarded, etc., etc. But there are rumors of cultists and cutthroats and illegal brothels and other sorts of things going on in Undertown. So it's not a place you want to be caught in after dark if you don't have a few buddies with you to fend off the cut purses and cutthroats that hang out there. So woe be to he who stays at a low altitude, because there's a wall around the regular part of Highseat, but they don't really police Undertown, so be very careful. So, what kind of place is Highseat? I mean, it has a booming trade in a lot of things: glass, slaves, fish, minerals, iron, a lot of bronze goes in and out. Glass is very popular. It's a medieval era, so glass is like an art. And being so close to a desert, a lot of glass goes in and out of Highseat, and there are a lot of craftsmen, etc., etc. So money is not a big problem. The economy's booming, all the banks are happy, etc., etc. So it's got a lot going on all at once. Now, enter our protagonist, because this was actually a one-on-one, I guess a duet sort of game. I wanted to run another sort of like mystery sort of game, much in the same vein as Ocean Rim or the 12 Trees campaign, where you don't really know what's going to happen because we're just kind of going by the skin of our teeth, that kind of thing, and see what unfolds out of that. So I wanted a big city, and I wanted like culty activity, and I wanted mystery and intrigue and stuff like that. So most of the campaign takes place just in Highseat. And you'll be happy to know that Dewhurst, where the 12 Trees took place, is just to the southeast of Highseat. So this is kind of the same realm, the same fantasy map, if you will. And Dewhurst is maybe a week's travel from Highseat, so hey, cool. Not that it matters for this campaign, but for those of you that like to world build and are doing your homework, hey, it's on the same map. I'll show it to you later on the D&D Stories Facebook, link in the description below, and all that fun stuff. Enter our protagonist. I don't say hero because he was not a hero, and we'll get to that, but enter our protagonist, Miles. Miles does not have a last name because he's a private investigator. Technically, he's a level 1 rogue. You can see where this is going because I've started this very same story before, but we'll get to that. Miles does not have a last name because he's always changing it. He's always ducking in and out of shady circles, being a private investigator, looking for the cult that supposedly killed his parents. Now, he cannot seem to find any concrete evidence, any correspondence, any guys wearing like culty robes and shit. They're very hush-hush. Ninjas do not actually wear black and run on rooftops. No, they dress like civilians, and they're vegetarians, did you know, etc., etc. So they're very smart. They're very hard to track down. But he knows there's some bullshit going on here in Highseat, and he's going to find out, and he's going to expose them to the public, and, then the city guard will have to believe him and go after these guys and shred them all to pieces because, I don't care. You killed my mom. That kind of thing. So, Miles only has one piece of evidence, one solid piece of evidence, and that is an old letter that refers to a group called the 5-Star Flesh Hand. Now, what is a 5-Star Flesh Hand? It's a starfish, It's a starfish with an eyeball in the center. It's their weird culty symbol. And it pops up here and there in older tomes of history, of tax records, of very strange places, like a seal on a tax record, or a signature on a letter that doesn't have signatures on it. It's just a little stamp somewhere. And you might see it down a super dark alley where cutthroats hang out, well, just carved into the stone somewhere. It doesn't mean anything to anybody unless you're looking for it. So he's got this one piece of evidence, and he's asking around, because of course he is. He's a private investigator. He's got his own business set up with a 2-story house, and I rolled to see like how well off his parents were when they died. And of course they leave everything to him. So turns out his parents were relatively well off, not like aristocrats, but pretty close. They were getting ready to move up in the caste system. But they were picked off by Cloak and Dagger that had to do with the 5-star flesh hand. So while Miles is asking around, he asks the wrong person about them by name, because just running around asking about some culty shit, if you accidentally ask somebody who's friends with the cult, well, suddenly they know who you are, and they know that you're looking for them, and they know what you look like, and you can kind of see where that's going. So we start our game in the lowest level of the lowest dungeon in the palace of Highseat. Now, I said this was like a city-state, but there's basically like a king and a queen and a princess, etc., etc. A royal family, a high aristocratic thing. They live in a big castle, because Tony's not good at making up fantasy settings. But strange be it that he ends up in the royal dungeon where there are no windows and nobody to hear you scream, because he was arrested by the royal guard when he was asking the wrong questions and checking out the wrong library books. So he is instantly very suspicious. Why the royal guard? Why not a bunch of assholes with daggers to just like stab me in the kidney and leave me to rot somewhere in Undertown? No, he was taken in by the police, by the city guard, whatever you want to talk about, the royal guard, who look after the upper echelons of society, came and grabbed him basically out of a library. Control the flow of information. Big Brother is watching you. Highseat might be made of white stone, but, you pull one of the bricks and, cockroaches crawl out. So he knows he's in a bad situation. So we kind of come in onto the scene with Miles has basically been like stripped down to his skivvies. They've been pawing through all of his stuff. He's like chained to the wall with his wrists above his head. And it's a torture chamber. It is. This is not a jail cell. He was left in a cell for like a night. They decided what to do to him, what they were going to do with him, and they said, okay, let's torture him and see what he knows. They're not pulling any punches here. So if he knows anything about the 5-star flesh hand, they're going to pull it out of him. And if they decide that he knows too much, they're just going to kill him. So you might not listen to a super paranoid private investigator out of some noir novel somewhere who has no solid evidence, but if he has enough facts that he can prove, yeah, he's as good as dead. So, Miles, level 1 rogue, ready, set, go. He's mostly naked. He's got like 9 health. I've already chained him to a wall somewhere. And I was like, okay, go. What are you going to do? And, of course, the torturer comes in. And he's got his big roll of knives and scissors and things. He's like, if I get to this tool, I'll believe whatever you say. And if we get to this tool, well, my gosh, I'll name my first son after you. And if we get to this tool, I'll go home early and you can just sleep it off for a while. And, this is like a sleazy, greasy guy with like crypt keeper hair who knows exactly what he's doing and he enjoys his work, which is kind of sick. But there it is. So he's got this big table and he's got his rolly stool and stuff like that. And Miles decides he's going to try and get any kind of information he can out of this guy, even though he's not going anywhere. So they chat back and forth for a while, and of course the conversation goes to the 5-star flesh hand, see how much this guy knows, and see if he can't get anything out of it. Because if these people just kind of assassinate folks that know about them, what are they doing? What are they for? You know, it's like discovering the big conspiracy. Well, yeah, but what's it all for? What are they doing? So, what is the 5-star flesh hand? He doesn't know. All he knows is that they killed his mom and dad, and he's going to find out who they are and expose them for the evil bastards that they are. So I have him roll some fortitude saves. I have him roll some will saves, because, yeah, he's going to start pulling fingernails. He's going to start, he's going to pull an iron out of the fireplace over there, and he's going to draw lines on your ribs with the orange hot poker, etc., etc. And he passes most of them, but he does pass a little bit of information that, he knows their symbol, he knows their sigil, the gross-looking starfish with an eye in the middle. And at some point, eventually, there is a banging on the torture room door, and he's like, oh, right in the middle of my work. And he puts his tools down, and he turns around, and he goes over to the door, and it opens, and it's the Princess of Highseat, Katerina Highseat. And he's like, Princess, what are you doing down here? And he's like, and she said that she was there to check on the prisoner, to hear his progress, and to make sure that the man was singing like a canary. And Miles is like, oh man, this goes all the way up to the royal family, doesn't it? They have their roots, their nasty fingernails in everybody in Highseat, and all the way up to the king, to the princess. And he's he's like, oh, this is way bigger than my level 1 ass is going to be able to deal with. And the princess tells the torture artist to go off for a while because she wants to take matters into her own hands. Yeah, he goes, Princess, this is not a job for one with delicate hands like yourself. This is not a job for a woman to be torturing this idiot here that I've already got him in chains. He's already told me a few things. I'm doing a good job, I promise. And she, of course, pulls the "Are you questioning me?" princess face. And she sends him off because apparently Miles is not the only one in the dungeons of Highseat that has seen or heard of the 5-star flesh gang. Cult. The 5-star flesh hand cult. And she tells him to go torture somebody else, basically. And she picks up a pair of tongs. And she goes over to Miles, like she's going to pull his tongue out. And she goes, she kind of makes the shooing motion. Now leave us, sir. And of course, she's the princess. He obeys. And leaves. And of course, as soon as he does, she turns around and she locks the door. And she comes back. And she undoes Miles's bonds and lets him off the wall. And she immediately flips on her head and she goes, oh my God, are you okay? And he goes, no, I've been tortured for a while. She goes, you know of the 5-star flesh hand cult? And he goes, yeah. He goes, so have I, but I believe they have sway over my father. Here, take this scroll in a scroll container. You must use it as evidence and expose them. You are a PI, are you not? I have read the papers that they've already been filling out about you at the guardhouse. And he goes, yes, I am. He goes, you must, come up with another identity. You must vanish. And you must expose them for what they are. I can do nothing from the palace. Please, you must help. And straight away he's into it. Because, hey, it's a quest from the princess. A quest that he was already on, but a quest nonetheless. And she gives him this black scroll case, which apparently has a piece of evidence that proves that the 5-star flesh hand exists at the very least, which is, hey, it's a rock. It's a rock that you can cling to in this conspiracy theory. And he goes, how do I leave? That torture artist will know that I escaped, and he will know that you let me go. Surely if the king is under their sway and you are not, he will know straight away, and terrible things will happen to you, your highness. And she goes, I know, we will have to make it look as though you escaped while it was just you and me. What should we do? And Miles looks at me across the player. The player looks at me across the table. He's like, can I just punch her in the fucking mouth? And I go, what? He goes, yeah, I've got to make it look like I got loose and then assaulted her and ran away. If she just stands here, they're never going to believe her. They're not stupid. I was chained to the wall. Surely my roguish talents allowed me to unmagical myself when she wasn't looking, but how would I get by without hurting her? And I'm like, okay, you're going to try to make this look like an actual escape. And so he explains the story. He's like, well, I've got to make this look real. So he takes her tiara, because she's a princess, of course she's wearing one, and he bends it just a little bit. And he sets it on the table, and he takes off this necklace that's hanging into her boobs, and he tears the locket off of it, and he throws the string of beads and gems across the ground, and he drops the locket. And he's like, okay, I'm gonna have to hit you in the face. What? And she's a princess. She has 5 health and no armor, so she goes down instantly with a big black eye, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude, what's your alignment again? So he punches her the fuck out, and he's like, okay, time to get out of here. I was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? This campaign is already, it's off the rails. It's gone. And being the roguish sort, of course, he searches her body. And I was like, if he searches her cleavage, I'm going to lose my goddamn mind. Because this is already sounding like Mattias the Prowler. But he searches her, and it looks like she had other things to give him before he knocked her out. Because she had a map on her that showed a secret exit from the palace dungeon. And it's actually very close to him. All he has to do is sneak away, down the hallway, etc., etc. And he's like, okay, well, if I go down this hallway, turn right again, past this storage room, and he works it out in his head so that he doesn't have to pull the map out left and right, making the crinkly paper sound. He's actually properly roguing this. So after having punched the princess out because reasons, he makes it look as though he escaped. He puts the chains across the ground. He scatters the tools. He takes the table and gently puts it on his side. And he's like, okay, all of his stuff is in a chest in the corner, because of course it is. And he puts all of his roguing stuff back on. It's just regular leathers and a dagger and the basic D&D starting stuff. Again, he's level 1, so he doesn't have anything good on him. But Miles makes his way out of the torture chamber and kind of looks back and forth to see if there are any guards posted. No, nobody's there. But there are other rooms that are meant for torture, 8 of them, as a matter of fact, and he kind of marvels at this for a minute, that there are 8 rooms, not as dungeon cells, but 8 separate rooms that are meant for torture. And he's like, Jesus Christ, this place is dark. This, the city of white stone upon the mountain, home of glass blowers and freaking beautiful architects, but no, beneath the palace, when you start pulling bricks, ooh, the plague rats come out, the cockroaches, they crawl, etc., etc. And even while he's going from like hiding place to from shadow to shadow, he can hear the yells, the screams of men and women being tortured or yelling for food or water as they're left in these dungeons to rot, whether for something to do with this cult or not. You know, this is a fucking miserable place. And you know, this was just like his first 24 hours here, so he's tired. He's not been getting any sleep. He's got, you know, no food was in his pack because he wasn't traveling. He was in the city. He didn't carry any food on him. And, you know, he peeks into some of these torture chambers. There are men, there are women, there's, you know, all different walks of life, colors of skin, different things like that. There doesn't seem to be any pattern to the people that he sees there. But, he's level 1, so he decides that a jailbreak is probably not a good idea. So he doesn't stop to save anybody. He doesn't stop to open any cell doors to cause a cacophony so he can get away. No, he's going to sneak out, and, you know, whatever happens to them, happens to them. It's none of his business. I was like, okay, I'm, you know, just within the first 20 minutes or so, I'm sort of seeing what kind of guy Miles is, and selfish is certainly at the top of the list. So he goes through a bottleneck. He finds one guard and knocks him out. He goes down some stairs. He goes left. He goes right. He goes by the instructions that the princess was going to give him before she punched her in the fucking mouth. And yes, it was hilarious at the time, but it sounds terrible when you talk about it, because she was there to let him loose and let him escape. And he decided, oh, I need to make this look real. Poof! God damn. At least he didn't, like, steal her crown or something. I wasn't sure if he was the kind of player who would, like, take all of her rings and all of her like, necklace and her crown, but he actually didn't. He made it look like it was a desperate, like, escape attempt. But he passes the guy who was torturing him in one of the rooms that's off to one side, one of the torture rooms. And he's torturing some woman who it sounded like she saw some of these cultists, like physically saw them in their culty robes with their nasty, like, pewter necklaces and stuff. She saw them in their uniforms, and she's begging and pleading, so Miles kind of hangs out there for a second while she spills her guts. He does not go to rescue her, though, because that would cause a lot of noise, and he doesn't want to cause a lot of noise, so he leaves her to her fate and goes along to the secret passage that the map tells him about. And, of course, it's back in some dark, unlit corner where the light of torches does not reach, and he pushes on the brick, and then he pushes on the brick, and then there's, like, a little pull chain, and then this little section of wall goes away, and he can crawl through it, and then he can reset the weight, and it goes back into place again, so you can't tell anybody passed by. I was like, okay, you've escaped the palace dungeon, but where are you now? So he paws through his stuff, and he pulls an ion torch. Now, Miles is very fond of his ion torches, and ion torches are just torches without fire. They glow on the end. They don't make heat, and they don't burn. They just make light. So, whatever. He's being fancy because he can. But he lights an ion torch, and he sees that he's standing what looks like in a waterway. There's maybe an inch or two of water on the floor, and there's a little side path that you can stand on to not be in the water. And he's like, oh God, it's the sewer level. Oh no. But he's in the waterway underneath Highseat. And I go, you know, it's a city. You know, it drinks up a lot of water. So they, of course, have to have indoor plumbing to an extent. And they have to filter out all the sewage, all the bad water, etc., etc. So this must go not only under the palace, but out into the city itself. So, Miles, you're actually in a very good position, because that means that you can find any number of escape routes, because as long as you follow the water, it will eventually go outside into daylight. And by then I've got this, like, the first proper dungeon, quote unquote, laid out on the table in front of me. I'm like, okay, this is a very easy dungeon because it has dozens of exits. And I've actually used this map before for something else, but, turn it sideways and then move some of the rooms around, and hey, it's a brand new dungeon. But this dungeon, quote unquote, was special because it had just the little section he was in, I think, had like 14 exits. Like, he came in through a secret passageway, down some stairs, past a crawl space. I was like, okay, even a basic passing knowledge of follow the water, it has to go somewhere. And he'll follow it out, and, 2 rooms, and he's out. This is not what transpired. Miles, the PI, with his 9 health and his leather armor and his level 1 stupid ass, punching princesses out. No, it was maybe the size of like a piece of printer paper with a grid on it, and I was like, okay, here's a big room full of water that's got a purifier in it. Here's some passages, here's a storage room, here's all these waterways that branch out across the city. If he picks any one of these, I'm going to say he comes out in this district, or he comes out on the edge of the city, or he comes out, near his favorite tavern, etc., etc. I had like 14 different places for him to pop out of. And goddamn, if he didn't avoid every single goddamn one of them. Like, if he'd picked a direction, it would have been like 2 rooms. He would have been out. No. He went down some stairs, and he went this way for a while. Oh, that's no good. Changes direction. And he goes this way for a while, through this room. He looks at a water purifier. He checks out some pumps. Oh, this is no good. He goes in a different direction. And he goes, oh, here's a storage room with a couple of guards. I'm going to knock out these guards and take their gold. And he's like, well, no, that's no good. That was a storage room. That's just a dead end. He goes in a different direction. I was like, and I can't say anything because I am the voiceless narrator, but it's a waterway. Pick a direction and you'll be gone. So I really did. It got to the point early on where I was like, okay, I've got all these rooms, but I'm not going to like design this whole place, because if he picks a direction and goes, it's going to be a 2-room dungeon. It really is. So I shouldn't really bother. He ended up going through like 15 or 16 different rooms just looking for trouble. I was like, you're level 1. Stop asking for trouble. Just pick a direction. But no, the basic logic of being underground, whether it's a cave system or an underground river or the sewer level or the waterway, is to either follow the water in one direction or find the source of the water in the other direction. Wandering in a random ass pattern doesn't help, and it usually, uses up all your resources. So Miles spends, I'm not kidding, 2 or 3 days just roaming tunnels, roaming storage rooms, and finding like purification crystals that are used for the waterways, and checking out the pumps that are obviously very well maintained. Some of them are magic so that the gears don't rust. He's finding like, grates that catch debris, sometimes bodies. He's coming across the occasional roaming rat, things like that. It's very well maintained. The city of White Stone has a lot of people in it, but there's enough money, enough frog skins to maintain its drinking water, its bathing water really, really well. And he starts to feel overwhelmed because this is not just a sewer level. This is like the nerve center for all the wells, all the fountains, all the water features, if you will, of Highseat. And again, I know I'm talking in circles. Again, all he had to do was pick a direction, and it would have been fine. But no, he wormed this way, and he went down these stairs, and he checked that room, and then he followed that way for a couple of 100 yards, and just on and on and on. I wish I still had a picture of the it wasn't randomly generated, but like the big cacophony of rooms and hallways that I pulled in to use for it. It was probably like from some book somewhere I've got. It was just a complicated dungeon that didn't have any heads or tails to it, and I just put water in it and called it a waterway. But I think he traversed maybe 85 or 90% of this absolute labyrinth before he figured out, oh, you know what? If I follow the water, I might be able to get out of here, because it has to come out. It has to go outside somewhere. It can't all just be going in a circle. I was like, yes, that's how waterways work. They go from A to B. Anyway, along the way, something more interesting than sewer rats and purification crystals happen. He comes across a pair of guards that are dragging a prisoner away, somebody from the torture chambers of the palace above, and he's already, up to his armpits in this waterway, so they've dragged this person a long way. And it's a young woman, he can tell kind of by the shape of her hips. Let's go on and say it. The shape of her hips. And she doesn't have regular feet. She has hooves. And he goes, "What is that? What is that?" And he follows, obviously, stealth mode Miles. He's the private investigator who has levels of rogue, or, a level of rogue. Again, level 1, asking for trouble, again. But surely when the torture artists in the palace are done torturing someone, they gotta get rid of them. So, do they kill them right there and spill the blood all over the floor, all over their work tables and stuff? No. They have something more interesting than that, because of course they do. So these two guards are dragging this woman, with one arm around one guy and one arm around the other guy, unconscious, of course, to this special chamber, which is just kind of off to one side. There's no rhyme or reason to it. And Miles can see from where he is, he's got a looking glass. He can see from where he is that the room beyond is rather clean. There's no water, there's no mold, there's very little in the way of bioluminescence. But beyond that, it's just kind of a very, very empty room. The only thing that he can see in there are bare scraps of metal, an occasional helmet that some guy might wear, or a broadsword laying leaned up against the wall, etc., etc. But the rest of the room is freaking spotless. It's almost as though dust refuses to settle there. And Miles kind of strokes his chin for a minute, and he's like, "Wait a second." And he immediately charges, straight into these guys, stealth. There's no more stealth for this. And he gets up behind one of these guys, and of course, belts him over the head with his sap, rolls maximum damage, because of course he does, and has to do combat with the other guy. The woman kind of ragdolls to the ground. And Miles kind of chances a glance to one side, and I go, "Okay, roll me perception." Because we're playing Pathfinder, so it's perception, not spot. And he rolls perception, he gets a 17 or an 18, and sure enough, his fears are confirmed, for inside this room is a gelatinous cube. And for those that don't know, a gelatinous cube can absorb and dissolve anything other than stone and metal. And that includes flesh and bone. So if you want to get rid of a prisoner, or the subject of a torturous row that's told you everything they know, and you don't want to just cut their throats, they could throw this woman to the gelatinous cube and it would just absorb her, and she would dissolve inside its mass. And it can't eat stone, or it would have left the room, and it can't eat metal, which is why there were scraps of metal and old swords and helmets around the room. So clearly a few guards, bit the big one when they found this thing, but they're using it like a trash compactor for prisoners and such. So he belts the first guy, he goes down, and Miles does combat with the other palace guard, who of course was not expecting to be attacked, so he's got like a short sword, and that's about it. So Miles makes short work of him with a well-placed roguish feint, and decides that he's going to save this woman and toss the two guards to the gelatinous cube. So, and why it doesn't come out through the doorway, I don't know. I guess it's too big. Because, by that logic, it should be able to squeeze out into the hallway. Shut up! Shut up, Miles. And Miles actually questioned this at some point. Why doesn't it come out? Shut up! Do you want it to come out? No. Then shut up! So he paws these guys over for their gold. He paws them over for any kind of valuables. And he decides that rather than have them wake up and say, hey, somebody sneaking around the waterways stole this lady we were trying to kill, he's going to throw them to the gelatinous cube. And throw them in he does after a while, and he kind of just like kicks them in, rolls them in, and the gelatinous cube, of course, and they're already unconscious, so they don't feel it. And they are absorbed into its goopy mass, where they are little more than, suits of armor with skeletons inside. And even after that, the skeletons dissolve as well. So they are nothing more than suits of armor sprawled out across the ground. And the gelatinous cube grows just a little bit bigger, so it's not going to escape the room. Whew. So Miles takes this woman and gets kind of a closer look at her. And I go, Miles, she's a fawn. And he goes, a fawn? Really? Like a deer person? And he goes, yeah, from the waist down, she's got like a little leafy loincloth. From the waist down, she's got furry, like speckled with white legs that end in cloven hooves. And from the waist up, she is like a beautiful, like lithe sort of woman with the ears of a deer, which are down right now because she's unconscious. She's, very beautiful, very shapely. She's a fawn. She's a fanciful creature. And in Highseat, such things are not impossible, but they are the subject of rumor and story. You would never see a fawn in Highseat. Ha ha ha. They're a rare novelty sort of thing that you would only see in a storybook or hear about, from an adventurer who just came in from a faraway land, etc., etc. Miles knows of them, but he has never seen one for himself. So this exotic creature has sort of appeared before him. And he goes, wait, was she in the other room with the other guy, the torture artist? He was torturing her, and he's like, wait, is she like all, is she all fucked up? Does she have like cuts up and down her? Was she raped? Is she got wounds on her head? How does she look? And I go, she looks pretty goddamn awful. She's got the same burn marks that you do along her ribs, and she's got, somebody's been like slicing parts of her hand and doing all these horrible things. And he goes, okay, I've got a spare potion, because I was actually very generous when he created his character. I gave him like a bunch of money. I was like, you're by yourself, here's a bunch of money, buy potions, buy extra supplies. So he's got an extra potion or two, and I think he found one on one of the guards as well. But he passes this woman a potion. So he's kind of got like her cradled in his arms. And he passes her a potion of Cure Light Wounds. And, given that she's a level 1 creature, or whatever, I don't really know as far as fawns go in stats, but it's enough to make the burns disappear from her ribs and the slash marks disappear from her palms. And it's enough to wake her up. And of course she freaks out immediately because she doesn't know where she is. She was being tortured last she checked. And she's got, again, the leafy loincloth and the leafy bra, because fan service, and I say so. But Miles kind of lets her stand up, lets her look around, lets her kind of see that the other guys that were dragging her are gone. He's like, "You okay? You're not gonna kick me in the face or anything, are you?" Because he has no idea how strong she is. You know, if she's no different than like a male fawn, you know, getting kicked in the head could be the death of him. You know, he might fall into that moving water and not wake up. So he gives her some space so she can freak out for a few moments and tells her what's going on. You know, you were going to be gelatinous cube chow and I couldn't let that happen. You know, come, we must get out of this place. You know, what is your name? And she goes, "Dancy is Dancy." And he goes, "Your name is Dancy?" He goes, "Yes, Dancy is Dancy." And he goes, "Does Dancy always talk in the third person?" "Dancy does." And he goes, "Oh, great. Okay." So Dancy, and yes, she can dance, thank you very much, but she doesn't feel like it right now, thank you. Especially not in these dark tunnels full of water and rats and dead men. She does not feel like dancing right now. But Dancy is Dancy. And she goes, "Dancy, okay. Why don't you stick with me? In fact, here, why don't you hold the light so I've got both hands free, and you know, you stay with me until we get out of here, and then once we get out, you can decide what to do from there." And she goes, "You have saved Dancy's life. Dancy owes you a life debt." And he's like, "Oh no." And I'm like, "Oh yes." She decides she's going to stay with you until her debt is repaid. And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Yes." Dancy has joined the party. Do 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 do. And he's like, "Fuck." Because I don't know why people talking in the third person was like one of his like the chinks in his armor of things that he finds annoying. Like me personally, I don't like when people touch me while I'm eating. That just sets me off for some reason. For him, people that talk in the third person annoy him to no end. Like he becomes like inescapably angry until they shut the fuck up. So, of course, his first companion has to be Dancy the Fawn, who, yes, Dancy is Dancy. And, you know, we have to find our way out of here. Don't speak, please. We're going to be... I was like, oh, I see how it is. You're going to tell her to shut up, but it's in the name of being stealthy. And he's like, yeah... if she shut her goddamn mouth. I was like, what is it with you and violence against women? Are you just going to knock her out too? And he goes, no, she needs to hold the light in case of stuff. And I was like, you can't really be stealthy if you're holding an ion torch. You know that, right? It's like, and I don't know what this is. Maybe you guys can talk about it in the comments below. Have you ever had a rogue try to sneak around while holding a torch? And you look at them and they wonder why they get a -20 to hiding. And I was like, you're holding a light source. They know exactly where you are. It's like, she's holding an ion torch. If you want to sneak, you're going to have to leave her ass behind. And it's like, oh, damn it. So they wander around, they go through different storage rooms, they find scraps of food, scraps of paper that are all schedules about rotating the purification crystals out, etc., etc. Nothing really about the 5-star flesh hand is down in this waterway where any of the city workers might find it. But that room with the gelatinous cube was certainly very telling that they are actively murdering people that know about this cult, and they all work in the palace. So the reach of the 5-star flesh hand reaches all the way to the tippy top of Highseat, and that's not a good sign. So after a while, finally, and again, they while Dancy was there with him, it was at least a day and a half more of roaming this stupid place because he avoided every single goddamn exit I threw in front of him. And I can't decide if he was wanting to clean out the dungeon, quote unquote, for treasure and stuff, or if he was honestly just, like, being a bumblebee that refuses to go out the window when you open it. It was just like, there's an exit there, oh, he didn't take it. Oh, there's an exit there, oh, he didn't take it. I was starting to get desperate, and be like, the floor gives way under you and the water carries your dumb ass outside or something like that. But I didn't have to do that, thank God. So finally, somewhere in the middle of day 3 of wandering this goddamn place, and they took water and rations off the guards so they didn't starve to death, but somewhere around day 3, day 4, they finally emerge at the base of Mount Highseat. And Dancy is, of course, ecstatic. Dancy is outside! And she runs, out into the wood, because this is basically a river at this point that flows out of the city. Dancy is outside! And she runs one way. Dancy is outside! And she runs the other way. Dancy is out! Poof! And she face plants when her hoof gets caught on a tree root. And Miles is like, oh, God. He doesn't even know what to say to her. He's like, are you okay? Dancy's okay? Shut up. So they're at the base of the mountain on the other side of the city. Like Undertown is behind them, but above them as well. So if they turn around and just kind of avoid the tunnel and go back up, they could go straight back up into Highseat. But that's not really what Miles wants to do, because now that he's escaped from the palace dungeons, he probably shouldn't show his face in Highseat anytime soon, because he's basically a wanted man now. And Dancy is very enthused to be outside, and thank God there's no one else around and nobody guarding the exit of the waterway, because why would they? But nobody's guarding the exit of the waterway. So the surrounding forest, the surrounding wood, is at least open to them for camping, for resources, etc., so long as he can put up with her. So they make camp for the night and decide to run their next move in the morning. And that is where I think we will leave it this time. I think this has been a pretty good returning episode, so we'll pick it up next time for this adventure, and I'll see you guys on the next D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Thanks for listening. Hit that like button for me. If you'd like to hear more stories by me, please check out my audio novels here on YouTube. They're available for free. Cyranox the Feared is swords and sorcery, and Shield Maiden is all about superheroes. Check them out for me, and if you're feeling extra generous, I do have a Patreon as well. Links in the description below. Keep gaming.